VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And we are ready to get started here. We thank you for joining us on the VCY America Radio Network and this Crosstalk affiliate station. In for Jim Schneider, I am Dalton Windsor. We begin today with really some breaking news from, just these past couple of hours as we go to the air live here Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. The Supreme Court has ruled today, Friday, that President Trump exceeded his powers with his expansive use of tariffs. So if you've been listening at all or maybe surfing social media, you're seeing much being said right now about President Trump and something what many are calling his final defeat on the subject. But led by Chief Justice John Roberts, the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision, said the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which Donald Trump has been standing on, well, Chief Justice and others have said, the Supreme Court has voted and said that, President Trump, you do not have the power to levy large, indefinite tariffs. So the Chief Justice said, he said that they did not decide whether tariffs are proper policy, only that Mr. Trump didn't have authority under the law that he claimed. Again, it was a 6-3 decision. Justices Clarence Thomas, Brett Kavanaugh, and Samuel Alito Jr. were the ones who dissented. And, of course, the president has came out and been making his argument and saying what he is planning to do, next.
I have very effectively utilized tariffs over the past year to make America great again. Our stock market has just recently broken 50,000 on the Dow, and simultaneously, and even more amazingly, broken 7,000 on the S&P, two numbers that everybody thought upon our landslide election victory could not be attained. Think of that. Nobody thought it was possible to do it within 4 years, and we did it in 1 year. All of the Nobel Prize winners in economics, they said, no, you couldn't do it in 4 years. Well, we didn't do it in 4 years. We did it in 1 year. We broke every record in the book, and we're continuing to do so.
Obviously, America's enemies are seemingly thrilled by today's news that the Supreme Court has decided against President Trump and his use of tariffs. But according to what he was saying in the press conference, President Trump said the tariffs have done more than just bring in, millions and billions of dollars.
Tariffs have likewise been used to end 5 of the 8 wars that I settled. I settled 8 wars, whether you like it or not, including India, Pakistan, big ones, nuclear, could have been nuclear. Prime Minister of Pakistan said yesterday at the great meeting that we had, he said yesterday that President Trump could have saved 35 million lives by getting us to stop fighting. They were getting ready to do some bad things. But they've given us great national security, these tariffs have. And together with our strong borders, reduced fentanyl coming into our country by 30%. When I use them as a penalty against countries illegally sending this poison into our country to poison our youth. All of those tariffs remain. They all remain. I don't know if you know that or not. They all remain.
So the president saying more or less that the entire court has made a terrible decision, and also as recognized by Congress, which they refer to that are even stronger. He says there are other methods. There are other methods to get things done now.
But other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected. We have alternatives. Could be more money. We'll take in more money, and we'll be a lot stronger for it. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. We'll continue to do so. To show you how ridiculous the opinion is, however, the court said that I'm not allowed to charge even $1. I can't charge $1. Can't charge $1 to any country under IEPA. Not $1. I assume to protect other countries. This must have been done to protect those other countries, certainly not the United States of America, which they should be interested in protecting. That's what they're supposed to be protecting. But I am allowed to cut off any and all trade or business with that same country. In other words, I can destroy the trade. I can destroy the country. I'm even allowed to impose a foreign country destroying embargo. I can embargo. I can do anything I want, but I can't charge $1. Think of that. How ridiculous is that? I'm allowed to embargo them. I'm allowed to tell them you can't do business in the United States anymore. We want you out of here. But if I want to charge them $10, I can't do that. It's incorrect. Their decision's incorrect. But it doesn't matter because we have very powerful alternatives that have been approved by this decision for those that thought they had us.
From those who thought that they had us. Well, in just some final comments today, President Trump announcing that he is moving forward and he's imposing a global tariff. Let's listen in on this.
We're going forward. We will be able to take in more money, and there'll no longer be doubt, because there was always doubt. I know the people that brought the lawsuit, and they're sleazebags, major sleazebags, but I know them, and they're foreign country centric. They were sending things into our country, and the people representing them knew full well, but they were sending things into our country, and they were beneficial to other countries, but very, very bad for us. And I stopped it, and we'll just keep it going. So we have we have a totally firm decision now, and I don't think the court meant it, because the court doesn't show great spirit toward our country, in my opinion. A lot of bad decisions, but there are usually ways around it. This is something we could have done, as Justice Kavanaugh said, we could have done this originally, but we're doing it now. And the numbers could be far greater than the hundreds of billions we've already taken in. Yeah, please.
So following his comments there at a press conference not very long ago, the press then began asking questions and such, and we will, of course, move on and see what comes in next. But I can remember filling in for Jim couple, 2-3 years ago. It was one of my first times to have the honor to step in for Jim and cover Crosstalk. And I remember beginning the program that day, much like I'm beginning it today, with official words from the president, except, well, go back 2 or 3 years ago, it was President Biden who had been speaking. And I remember making the comment, how important globally the President of the United States is. And regardless of who that man is, what side of the aisle he is on, so much influence, so much power, so much say in regard to that office around the world, whether you agree with this president or disagree with this president or the one previous to him or administrations even before that. We just, as Americans, whatever side of the aisle you on, we think about our country and the influence we have. And then as Christians and the influence we have in helping to steer our government with the vote. When we as Christians make sure to vote in every election, be it school board, city, state, national elections, so important for we as Christians to never miss the opportunity to let our voice be heard. And our voice, of course, is that which would be from someone, by God's grace, that is moving, living, moving, and having our being with the mind of Christ. And so important, critically important, that we as Christians let our voice be heard in the ballot box and everywhere we possibly go. And yes, we're standing in truth, giving truth, and doing it in and with God's love. But much being said today, of course, he's the president, so we're hearing a lot about him. Earlier this week, President Trump going to Truth Social to honor the late Jesse Jackson, the renowned civil rights leader who passed away on Tuesday at the age of 84. President Trump announcing this, saying that I knew him well long before I became president. He said the man, Jesse Jackson, had lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people. I understand that several years ago, back in 2017, initially Jesse Jackson was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His condition was later revised to PSP early last year, a disease that causes progressive deterioration in balance, movement, eye control, swallowing, and other functions, which led to an accelerated decline and increased vulnerability to complications such as infections. But again, just comments from President Trump this week on the passing of Jesse Jackson, dead at the age of 84. Another minute or so before we have to take a break here. But President Trump also this week talking to a very large group of people at the White House in celebration of Black History Month. And do we have any grandmas listening today? I know of one who happens to be listening today. I would imagine there's several grandmothers out there and grandpas too. But no, we're going to ask the question, did you hear this grandma at the White House this week? The grandmother that's been now heard around the world. I don't know how much legacy media, though, has been covering this story. But because of the break, we're going to have to get through the break and come back on the other side. But we're going to introduce you to a grandmother who's been heard around the world this week. And President Trump has just said great things about her because of her stance with him. And it's heavy because this grandmother actually lost a grandson to gun violence. And no one wants anyone to go through something like that. But this grandma has had the opportunity to not only share her love and the story about her grandson whose life was taken all too soon, but this grandma has really kind of taken on legacy media, and that's why it's. I'm glad we're covering this story today because a lot of the legacy media probably just setting this one aside. But we're going to let Grandma Forlesia talk to us on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Crosstalk continues on the VCY America Radio Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, does the fossil record prove evolution?
Not at all, Chris. In fact, it couldn't prove evolution because evolution didn't happen. I don't even think it supports evolution very well. What we see in the fossil record are the same kinds of plants and animals which are alive today. They can be put into various categories, such as clams or snails or brachiopods. Some animals, like the dinosaurs, have gone extinct, but none of the fossils seem to point to one type of animal evolving or changing into another type. That's because evolution simply didn't happen. What did happen is creation. Creation of the basic types of plants and animals that God created. They exist into the present day or else have gone extinct, but nothing else has arisen since then. And that's the way it is back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
We are back on Crosstalk. Thank you for joining us. Friday News Roundup and Comment. Yes, I am in for Jim Schneider, but I certainly am not alone. We went right to the news today and have not yet given thanks to Sister Sandy for compiling stories all this past week so that we would have these things ready to bring to you on the air today. And also our thanks to Dennis and Master Control and Sister Molly, who is in the chair there with the telephone. So we'll see if we can get to opening the telephone lines and hear from you a little bit later on. So who is this grandmother that we're talking about? There was so much chatter. Of course, we talk about legacy media, which is the news companies that we've all heard from for decades and decades, legacy media, and the stories that they do cover and won't cover. And then there's social media these days where we get to see really a whole other side of things. And sometimes we see the rest of the story that we don't get from legacy media. In a White House press conference earlier this week, and we'll start with this, there's been so much again being said and accused about President Trump that he is racist. You ever heard that before? That has been charged at him so many times. And it was brought up again at White House conference earlier this week.
Where or when does the president believe he's been falsely called racist?
You're kidding, right?
No.
I will pull you plethora of examples. I'm going to get my team in that room to start going through the internet of radical Democrats throughout the years, Ed, who have accused this president falsely of being a racist. And I'm sure there's many people in this room and on network television across the country who have accused him of the same. In fact, I know that because I've seen it with my own eyes. And the president very much looks forward to having an event later this afternoon at 3 p.m. to celebrate Black History Month and to talk about how his policies are advancing opportunity and prosperity for all Americans through record tax cuts, through the Trump accounts that all Americans can access regardless of race. These are a great thing for the next generation of Americans. The president has also awarded hundreds of millions of dollars in additional funding to strengthen educational outcomes at historically Black colleges and universities across the country. Again, the president is protecting the hard-earned benefits of the 2.4 million Black veterans who honorably served in our nation's armed forces by reducing the backlog of veterans waiting for their VA benefits and for their home loans through the Department of Veterans Affairs. So there is a lot this president has done for all Americans regardless of race, and he has absolutely been falsely called and smeared as a racist, and I'm happy to provide you those receipts, and we gladly will right after this briefing.
That is, of course, Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, and we just think she is great, does a great job. And I would only say this, and to correct something that she said when she's talking about whatever race someone is. What we argue as Christians, there is only one race, the human race. And I'll repeat that, and I think it's something that every single one of us needs to just cement into our very soul so that when this subject comes up, we will always be prepared in saying that, and we can argue this biblically, there is only one race, the human race. Now, is there ethnicity? Are there differences in culture? And of course, those things exist. We're not saying that isn't a reality, but we are saying in regard to race, we see the human race. So, with that kind of setting things up, Karoline, she said that later in that day, Wednesday, that President Trump would be speaking at a Black History Month celebration, and he did. And President Trump introduced us to a grandma, Forlesia Cook. Until this press conference, I had never heard of this grandma before. But her grandson, Marty William McMillan Jr., was killed in 2017 at the age of 22. And Grandma Cook has since spoken publicly about the loss, including even testifying before Congress about his killing, losing him to gun violence. And after President Trump gave a few words at the event, there were several different speakers. He introduced us to Grandma Forlesia.
One of those who knows the importance of this mission is Forlesia Cook, a lifelong Washingtonian who tragically lost her grandson to violence in 2017. Forlesia, we're so sorry, and you are a spectacular person. If you could say a few words, please. Thank you very much. I like her. Please.
I like him, too. One thing I like about him, he keeps it real, just like Grandma. I appreciate that because I can trust him because he tells exactly how he feels and what he thinks. Thank God for this president. I am filled, my cup runneth over. Because he allowed his constituents, his people, to come to my house to interview me, to talk about the murder of my grandson. It seemed like nobody cared. I'm an advocate for murder. I marched. I rallied. I pulled out other families in the District of Columbia that had murders and did not have answers. Ooh. We marched and we rallied, and nobody heard me, Democrats. Get mad at me. Until this Republican sent his constituents, his people out there to interview me in my home. Have you ever heard of a thing? Then they invited me twice before Congress to testify for the beautiful bill that's going to change crime in the district. If you kill somebody, okay, you take a life, you do life. Just that simple. If you do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. Just that simple. And then we need National Guard, and which we did years ago. He brought it on. I love him. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about that racist stuff. And don't be looking at me on the news hating on me because I'm standing up for somebody that deserves to be standing up for. Get off the man's back. Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. Back up off of him. And Grandma said it.
You can't help but love her spirit there, as the crowd at the White House clearly did as well. And you grandmas out there, you think your voice doesn't matter. It certainly does. And of course, she has, paid a very high price at the loss of a grandson. And you just feel that. You just feel that in your heart to think of that, the weight of a loss like that. But the fact that she's using now her loss to be a voice for change. And if you do the crime, she says you will do the time. You take a life, you will do life. And that's what law and order is all about. Nothing about, according to her, it's nothing about partisan politics, but it's about right and wrong and making sure that our communities, our city and country roads, our city streets and country roads are safe. And by all means, gotta love when Grandma has something to say. We better move along as there is plenty more to get to here. Washington Times today reporting Democratic congressional leaders sent Republicans and the White House a counteroffer on immigration enforcement provisions that they want in exchange for their votes to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Stopgap DHS funding, it ran out at midnight last week, Friday. So the department is operating in a shutdown. Although many of its functions are considered essential and are in fact continuing. When we say DHS, we're talking about the Department of Homeland Security, and roughly 90% of DHS employees are still working to keep Homeland Security operations running, but they will not be paid until Congress passes a new funding bill. President Trump told reporters Monday this has nothing to do with Republicans. This is a Democrat shutdown. We're getting quite familiar again with these shutdowns. The Gateway Pundit reporting in a major development that could reshape the future of federal election law in the U.S., Senator Susan Collins of Maine has officially announced her support for the SAVE Act. You've heard about this, the SAVE Act? The Save America Act would mark the most significant overhaul of federal election law in decades, codifying citizenship verification into statute and potentially restoring confidence in the integrity of U.S. elections ahead of this year's midterms and beyond. I mean, who could vote against something called the Save America Act, right? Well, Susan Collins says she's in, and many were wondering because many believing she's more of a moderate, with Vice President J.D. Vance prepared to break a tie if necessary. Supporters of the legislation now say they have the numbers needed to pass the bill under a standing or talking filibuster scenario, marking a potential turning point in the GOP's long-running effort to implement nationwide voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements for federal elections. It can be recalled that Representative Anna Paulina Luna revealed that Senate leadership is moving toward nuking the so-called zombie filibuster and restoring an old-school standing filibuster to advance the Save America Act legislation that requires proof of U.S. citizenship to vote. According to Luna, John Thune signaled after a meeting with Donald Trump that the Senate is prepared to bring the SAVE Act to the floor without the 60-vote blockade. So we'll see where that one goes. Quickly here, and we're going to run out of time before we get to the next break, but wow, are you following this? And if you're a newsie, you're watching news, you follow the news, you know what's going on, you know what is happening in Iran. This headline here from the Iran International: over 1 million Iranians rallied across Europe, North America, and Australia last weekend in response to a call by exiled Prince Pahlavi, while nighttime chants echoed from rooftops and apartment blocks inside Iran in a coordinated show of solidarity. The largest gatherings took place in Toronto, Los Angeles, and Munich. The three cities highlighted in the exiled prince's call for solidarity rallies, where almost 1 million demonstrated. In Munich, the local police estimated the crowd at around 250,000 people. So global demonstrations here on behalf of Iran. Jim Schneider is on location this week with NRB, and the NRB has released a statement that the church needs to get to praying, and we'll talk about that on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Cemeteries and mausoleums are evidence of the sad reality of death. According to surveys, Americans overwhelmingly believe that heaven exists and that most are going there. A smaller number believes that hell exists, with only 0.5% believing that they will go there when they die. What if those who do not believe in hell find that they made a tragic and eternal mistake? In the book, Hell is for Real, author Gary Frazier discusses the separation, the suffering, and the sorrow of hell, along with other future events that will unfold. There is so much misinformation given by movies and television, psychics, and even by many religious circles. Gary Frazier presents scriptural truth on this all-important topic. Hell is for Real. Available as our way of saying thank you for your support of $17 or more. Call 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on the VCY America Radio Network. Again, in for Jim Schneider. I am Dalton Windsor. Friday News Roundup and Comment. And we just began talking about these worldwide protests. And in Munich, the local police estimated a crowd of around 250,000 people. The Toronto and Los Angeles rallies of Iranians drew something of 350,000 people, according to the two cities' police. Global demonstrations coincided with renewed nighttime protests across Iranian cities following a call by the exiled Prince Pahlavi. And we have a stack of stories here regarding what is going on with Iran. Let's back up for just a little bit if you've not been following the story. And we can always review, right? Review is so important. Protests that erupted nationwide late last year, sparked by an economic collapse and demands for freedom, began peaking in early January 2026. Those were met with brutal force. If you've been following the story, you know all about it. Lethal ammunition, mass arrests, internet blackouts, and widespread killings in Iran. Credible reports from human rights organizations have confirmed tens of thousands dead and detained, with Christians among those targeted, arrested, or killed. Amid this crisis, many Christian ministries report a vibrant and rapidly growing underground church in Iran, one of the fastest growing Christian movements in the world. Despite the intense persecution, house churches multiply in secret, fueled by personal encounters with Jesus Christ, often through what many are describing as dreams and visions. One has to know they're in these groups. Somewhere the Word of God is present. They're praying. There are satellite broadcasts, bold discipleship. Estimates from several groups that are named here, place Muslim background believers at 1 to 3 million, with underground networks thriving even as the regime cracks down there. I mentioned that host of this program, Jim Schneider, has been at the NRB meeting this week in Nashville, Tennessee. And as these Christian communicators have been gathering in Nashville, the NRB has made the urgent call for the global Christian community to immediately host sustained prayer and solidarity with the Iranian people who are enduring severe human rights violations and violent repression. And so, we have programs, like Voice of the Martyrs. We pray for the persecuted church. That's clearly an international call, an international prayer. They have special days that we set aside for that. But is the persecuted church on your prayer list? Again, if they're in Iran or wherever they may be, if these are Christians, they are our brothers and sisters. And so this is a great call from national religious broadcasters as they have met this week at their convention for the church, the global Christian community, to be in prayer for the persecuted. And of course, that includes these, our brothers and sisters in Iran. Breitbart reporting Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, claiming earlier this week that his military has weapons capable of sending an American aircraft carrier, quote, to the bottom of the sea, and will use them if President Donald Trump orders new strikes against Iran's illegal nuclear weapons program. We have the translation here. Khamenei jeering, saying the U.S. president has said that for 47 years, the United States hasn't been able to eliminate the Islamic Republic. And he says, that is a good confession, I say. You too will not be able to do this, speaking to Trump. As, again, Khamenei jeering at Trump in remarks made that was carried by Iranian state media. Oh, and he's going to talk about all of us. The Ayatollah saying Americans constantly say that they've sent a warship towards Iran. Of course, a warship is a dangerous piece of military hardware. However, more dangerous than the warship is the weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea. Are you threatening us, sir? Well, of course he is. I mean, we're dealing with people who have sworn to wipe Israel from the face of the map. And they've done that not once, not twice, countless times. And they're the larger fan of America. So one more time, he threatened the U.S. president keeps saying that they have the strongest military force in the world. The strongest military force in the world may at times be struck so hard that it cannot get up again. Quote, unquote, that from Ayatollah Khamenei. So much being said this week regarding Iran. The Defense Department sending a large array of additional weaponry to the Middle East, including more warships, air defenses, and submarines, in preparation for a possible military strike on Iran if President Trump makes that decision. The buildup of military hardware comes as the U.S. and Iran are still pursuing diplomatic talks that could help avert a conflict. Trump's top national security advisors huddled in the Situation Room of the White House on Wednesday discussing Iran, and according to a senior administration official, no final decisions about potential military action have been made. Here's a story from Worthy Christian News saying that President Trump obviously weighing an initial limited military strike on Iran aimed at forcing Tehran to meet U.S. demands for a comprehensive nuclear agreement. You see why I certainly agree with the call from the NRB for Christians around the world to be praying. The proposed opening assault would target select military or government facilities and could come within days if authorized. Officials describe the potential action as a calibrated pressure tactic designed to compel Iran to end uranium enrichment and return to serious negotiations while stopping short of a full-scale war that could provoke sweeping retaliation. If Iran refuses to comply, U.S. officials indicated Washington could escalate to a broader campaign against regime infrastructure, potentially aimed at weakening or toppling the Tehran government. Trump saying yesterday, Thursday, that Iran has just over 2 weeks to reach a deal. This right here from Just the News, saying Iran has just over 2 weeks to reach a deal with the U.S. on its nuclear program or suffer, quote, unfortunate, end of quote, consequences. Trump said that the country has no more than 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum, to reach the agreement, however, not specifying what the deal must include. Yet the U.S. and Israel want Iran to give up its nuclear program, its long-range ballistic missiles, and to stop supporting groups around the Middle East and stop using force against protesters inside of Iran. Also from Just the News, the State Department saying Wednesday that it is imposing visa restrictions on 18 Iranian regime officials, telecommunications industry leaders, and their immediate families. The restrictions are related to the regime's violent crackdown last month, a crackdown that included a near total nationwide internet shutdown that severely restricted independent documentation of abuses. The visa restriction policy targets officials believed to be complicit in serious violation of human rights, particularly inhibiting the right of Iranians to free expression and peaceful assembly, all of that according to the department. I have not once in my life awakened in the morning and not been free. You, if you were born here, you're an American, you're a grateful American, you have never put your feet on the floor in the morning and not been free. And I'm saying the freedoms, the rights that we have here as Americans. Now, spiritually speaking, that's a whole other story, because I know we're talking to Christians. We're Christians here. We understand the heavy burden, the heavy weight of being shackled in sin. And if that is you today, we certainly would point you to the Lord Jesus Christ, that you could know what true freedom is all about. That is the freedom that everyone needs, irregardless of your geography. The freedom that is found only in Jesus Christ. Freedom from our sin and its penalty, the wages of sin being death, but the gift of God being eternal life through Jesus Christ the Lord. But when we share these kind of stories of people who have had even limited freedom of speech and stuff taken from them, it's hard for you and I. We hear a story like that and we say, well, that's over there. It's hard for us to understand what so many are truly going through, what kind of oppression that truly is, because, again, we have always been free and thankful for it. But our freedoms here, be it the freedoms, the physical freedoms that we have here as Americans, those were paid for in blood. Our soldiers, our men and women who have paid the price that you and I could know what this freedom is. And then when we're talking spiritually, of course, we know that that freedom could only be paid for by one Jesus Christ. We are going to open up the telephone lines. We won't have a lot of time here today. Maybe something on the program you just want to weigh in on. We will open up the lines for just a few calls. That's all we're going to have time for today. 1-800-733-9829. 1-800-733-9829. There is a story out of my home state that I really want to get to. I was thrilled to hear about this because it has so many spiritual implications, regardless of the side of the aisle that you find yourself on. There was a huge battle in the state of Kansas earlier this week, and I personally am thrilled. That's just my opinion. I'm personally thrilled with the happenings there. And VCY, we have a couple of stations in the Sunflower State, and we'll get to this story on the other side of our break, as it is time we step aside for a few minutes while you go to the phone. We'll get 2-3 calls on that, may be all we have time for, but something you'd like to opine about that we've visited here, reported on today, by all means, 1-800-733-9829, 1-800-733-9829, 1-800-733-9829 is the telephone number, and we'll come back after this 60-second, it's not a 60-minute, I promise, 60-second short break, and we'll hear from you when Crosstalk continues.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. I played on my broadcast a speech of President Reagan from 1983 on the Year of the Bible at a National Christian Religious Broadcasters Convention. The man that introduced him, first name, Brandt. He's now passed away. I want to tell you a little story. That man went on to plant Christian radio stations all over the world. Then he became the president of this Christian broadcasting network to defend religious liberty and freedom and the right to preach and give out the gospel in America and around the world. You may say, I'll never have that kind of influence. I'll never have that kind of legacy. I can't live up to that. Well, guess what? You're not called to maybe necessarily do what he did. You're called to do what you're called to do. But you know what? That little boy had a single mother. And there was someone across the street that invited him to church. We met the Lord. And that was my wife's grandmother. Can you invite someone to church today? You never know what they might do for the Lord. Just walk across the street and be faithful.
If you were with us in the last segment, at the beginning of the last segment, we, of course, introduced you to that grandma in Washington, D.C. Maybe someone would want to make a comment about her great comments there in Washington, but can't help but love that grandma for sure. Linda is in Illinois. Linda, thank you for calling in for Crosstalk. You're on the air.
Yes, it's kind of a question. If they're questioning Trump about all the things he's doing, why not question Biden and Obama and all the other Democrat presidents on all the stuff they did?
That is a great question, Linda. I'm glad you called in with that.
So that's all I have for today.
All right. Thank you for the call. Carl is in Lake Dalton. And Carl, thanks for calling Crosstalk. You're on the air.
Yeah, may the Holy Spirit of God bless your ministry. Trump is going for voter ID. Brandon House and the Pillow Man made a DVD, an exhaustive DVD. And are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. We're just having a technical issue here. Hold on, just hold on, Carl. Hold on. We'll see if we can't get the line cleared. Are you there, Carl?
Oh yeah, I'm back.
Okay, anyway, that's better. Sorry.
They made an exhaustive DVD of the votes were stolen from the Dominion computers. If they can get the votes straight, but then the Dominion computers can just throw the wrong numbers up anyway.
Well, I can't comment in regard to any certain documentary or of such. It may very well have been a great one, but the fact is, this is some progress. Many believe that should have been taken care of a long time ago, and to have this Save Act, this Save America Act, just making sure you are in fact an American voting in American elections, many believe is a good thing. Sandra is in Kentucky. We'll say hi to Sandra. You're on Crosstalk.
Yes, sir. In regards to putting up anything in front of the doorway in my hallway, not in my apartment, in the hallway, the HUD development, low income, they do not allow any Christian, Jesus, God, blessing, anything to do with Christian and Christianity. And they started this 2 years ago, right after I moved here, and they said it's not them that's doing it, the administration, it's the government that is doing it. How much truth is in that? I have no idea how to answer that question, not knowing the whole situation, but certainly the greatest thing we can do is to let Christ reign in our hearts, and that's the one thing that they can never force out of our lives. So thank you for the call there, Sandra, in Kentucky. Wanted to mention this one. This is out of my home state. A supermajority of Kansas legislators overrode Governor Kelly's veto of Senate Bill 244, legislation which strengthens the state's Women's Bill of Rights by restoring clear, consistent definitions of sex in Kansas law and ensuring that women and girls have access to private, secure, sex-specific private spaces in public buildings. The vote was 87-37 in the House and 31-9 in the Senate. This bill became law immediately. That was a supermajority of Kansas legislators having to override the Democrat Governor Kelly there in the state of Kansas. And, some things just defy common sense. And if you want, your wife, your daughter, your granddaughter, whatever girl is in your life that you love and you want her to be safe and to have privacy and not be having to share bathrooms, private spaces with men pretending to be women, whatever the case may be. This is just my opinion. I am so glad to know that Kansas is protecting the women and girls that we care for. So definitely wanted to get that story on today. And a nearby state of Arkansas, we have Alice calling Crosstalk today. Hi, Alice. You are on the air.
Oh, thanks so much for taking my call. Yes, out of one blood made he all nations, and at the cross all men are equal. Praise the Lord. And yes, I do pray for the persecuted church. You know, we've been told to do that in Hebrews as though we were in bonds with them. May God give me a greater desire to pray for the persecuted everywhere. But there's a warning. If America doesn't see a revival, the wonderful freedom we have today could be gone. May God help us all.
Amen. All right. Always a blessing to hear from you. Thank you, Alice, in Arkansas. Just time for one more call, and that one will come in from the state of Pennsylvania. Sam, thank you for calling Crosstalk. You're on the air.
Yeah, my name's not Sam. I just like to say I'm from Pennsylvania. They called me Sam last time by mistake. I just want to say Jesus said many people won't get into heaven and only a few people will. So I wonder if people are going to be surprised when they get to heaven how few people there are going to be there. Could you give me your answer over the phone? Thank you.
Okay, well, you said it quite well, where the Lord did say, you know, that few would find it. The road is narrow, but Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father except by me. We read in John chapter 3, where the Lord said that many would not come to him because men love darkness rather than light. The important thing is not so much who is and is not going to be going, but we can just refocus that question to ourselves right now and ask the Father in heaven to do this precious business with us right now. For none of us are guaranteed another moment on this earth. But it's the most important question that we could ever ask. What have we done with Jesus Christ? Who is he to us? He only wants to be your everything. And he's promised to never fail us. Well, we trust that he will continue to be faithful. He always is, and he always will be. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.